I always thought my dad was just a normal, slightly boring, overly organized guy. He was the kind of dad who always ironed his shirts, never left dishes in the sink, and reminded me to lock the door 3 times before bed. He worked in IT, left the house at 8 a.m. sharp, came home at 6 p.m. on the dot, and spent his evenings reading financial blogs or fixing things that didn't really need fixing. He was dependable in every possible way, almost to a fault. I'm 17, and I've always been close with my dad. My mom died when I was a kid, and since then, it's just been me and him. We had a quiet routine, shared Sunday breakfast at our favorite diner, and watched bad detective shows together every Wednesday night. Nothing ever seemed off, until the day I opened the wrong drawer. I was looking for extra batteries in his desk when I noticed a locked compartment I had never seen before. It was small, metal, and looked way too new compared to the rest of his furniture. I don't know what got into me, but I became obsessed with that drawer. My dad wasn't the secretive type, or at least I thought he wasn't. Why would he need a lockable drawer? What was he hiding in there? For days, I kept checking when he wasn't home. Eventually, I found the key, taped underneath the desk. When I opened it, I found a burner phone, a thick wad of cash, and a stack of photos. Not just any photos. There were pictures of my dad with a woman I didn't know. They were smiling, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. There were even pictures of them with a little boy. At first, I thought they might be old. Maybe something from before my mom? But I flipped one over, and the date on the back was from just 2 months ago. My dad had another family. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking as I put everything back exactly as it was. I sat there for almost an hour, staring at the closed drawer, replaying every memory I had of my father. How could someone so steady, so normal, be capable of something like this? I didn't confront him right away. I needed more proof, more answers. So I started digging. The next few days felt like I was living in a movie, not a fun one, but one of those slow-burn psychological thrillers where everything you thought was safe starts to unravel. I barely slept. At school, I couldn't focus. At home, I kept acting normal, like nothing had changed. I had to. My dad was still the same cheerful, slightly nerdy guy he always was. He still made me tea before bed. He still asked about my classes. And every time he smiled at me, it made my stomach turn a little more. I had to know who that woman and boy were. So I did something I'm not proud of. I started going through his things. I waited until he left for work and then checked his browser history, which was surprisingly clean. I checked his email, but it was boring and professional. But the burner phone? That was the gold mine. I figured out the PIN by using his birthday backward. There were only a few numbers in the contacts, but one stood out, C. I didn't know who C was, but the messages told me everything. C was the woman in the photos. Her name was Claire. And she thought my dad's name was Mark. Mark. My dad's name is Daniel. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just cheating, he was pretending to be someone else entirely. I kept reading. They'd been together for 5 years. 5 years. The boy in the pictures was his son. A son I never knew about. A half-brother. My dad had a whole second life. According to the texts, he told Claire that he traveled a lot for work and only came home on weekends. That's when I realized every time he said he was going to a conference or a retreat, he was with them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But more than anything, I wanted to understand how someone could split themselves in two like that. I thought about calling Claire. I almost did. I even typed the number into my phone, but I stopped. What was I supposed to say? Hi, I'm your boyfriend's daughter. Except he's not Mark. He's Daniel. And I'm pretty sure we've both been lied to. Instead, I decided to follow him. I know how insane that sounds, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. That weekend, my dad said he had to go to a tech workshop in another city. I knew it was a lie. I told him good luck, gave him a hug, and then grabbed the keys to my mom's old car, the one he never sold. I waited until he left, then followed him. I stayed back, far enough that he wouldn't notice. My heart was beating like crazy the whole time. He drove for nearly 2 hours, out past the suburbs, into this quiet little neighborhood with identical houses and manicured lawns. And then I watched him pull into a driveway like he'd done it 100 times before. I parked a few houses down and waited. 5 minutes later, the front door opened, and there she was. Claire. She looked exactly like the photos. And the little boy came running out, yelling "Daddy." My dad scooped him up like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like he hadn't just lied to my face that morning. Like he wasn't betraying 2 entire families. I sat in that car until it got dark, trying not to completely fall apart. I didn't remember driving home. I must have been on autopilot, because one minute I was watching my dad hold that little boy like he was his whole world, and the next, I was back in my room, staring at the ceiling, numb. That night, I couldn't even cry. It was like my body had shut down. My brain just kept looping the image of my dad's face, his smile, his laugh, juxtaposed with the lie I had witnessed. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know who to tell. My mom? She'd be crushed. They weren't perfect, but she loved him. I mean, she defended him constantly, even when he forgot anniversaries or left for those work trips at the worst times. I always thought she was too patient, too forgiving. Now I knew why. He wasn't just flaky, he was somewhere else entirely. With another woman. With another child. And then came the worst part. I started wondering whether we were the second family. Had he been with Claire before my mom? Did he love Claire more? Did he wish they were the real family and we were the secret? Every moment I had with him started to feel like a lie. Even the good ones. Especially the good ones. It was like everything in my memory was being rewritten in real time. The next morning at breakfast, I stared at him across the table. He was making scrambled eggs and humming some Fleetwood Mac song, like the world was fine. He caught me watching him and smiled. "You good?" he asked. And I almost said it. I almost exploded right then. But something in me stopped. I needed to know more. If I was going to blow this up, I had to do it with facts, not just emotion. So I started keeping notes. I tracked every trip he took. I looked up the hotels he claimed to stay at, and most of the time, they didn't even have a record of a reservation under his name. I checked credit card transactions. I even went as far as calling his office pretending to be someone from another department, and guess what? On more than one of those conference weekends, he had taken time off work. I felt like a detective, or maybe a villain. I wasn't sure anymore. I was skipping homework to dig into my dad's lies. I was losing sleep over a truth I hadn't even fully processed. One day, I skipped school and drove back to the neighborhood where Claire lived. I parked on the same street and watched from afar. She came out to water the garden, totally normal, like her life wasn't built on a complete fantasy. I tried to imagine her side of this. What did she think was happening when he disappeared for a few days? Did she really believe the work excuses? Or maybe she knew about us. Maybe we were her secret. I didn't know what was worse, that she was as clueless as my mom, or that she wasn't. A few days later, I cracked. It was a Tuesday night. I had stayed up reading old texts between them on the burner phone, and one message stopped me cold. She had written, "Do you think she'll ever find out about us?" He had replied, "Not if I can help it." She. That was me. They were talking about me. Not my mom. Me. I felt physically sick. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I didn't know how to look at him. But I didn't say anything yet. Not until I figured out what to do with all of this. I needed a plan. So I decided I'd talk to Claire. Carefully. Anonymously. No accusations. Just questions. If she was innocent in this, she deserved to know. If she wasn't, well, at least I'd know who I was really up against. I didn't sleep the night before I decided to message Claire. I created a new email account and made it as vague as possible, no name, no photo, just a subject line that read, "You don't know me, but I think we need to talk." I kept the message short and careful. "Hi. I'm reaching out because I believe we may have someone important in common. I don't want to cause drama, I just want to understand the truth. If you're open to a private conversation, please let me know." I stared at it for 20 minutes before hitting send. I half expected her to ignore it or block me. But less than 3 hours later, she replied. "Hi. Who are you?" That was it. Cold. Direct. So I took a deep breath and replied again, this time a little more detailed. "I'd rather not share my name yet, but I believe we're both connected to a man named David. Please know I'm not trying to threaten or expose anything, I just need clarity." Again, I waited. I imagined her sitting at her kitchen table, reading it with her perfectly manicured hands. And then came the reply, "You're his daughter, aren't you?" My heart dropped. I froze. I didn't know what scared me more, that she guessed so quickly, or that she was calm about it. No shock. No denial. Just certainty. I answered, "Yes." She didn't reply for a full day. And when she finally did, the email was long. "I figured this day would come," she began. "I've known about you for a while. Not everything, but enough." He told me he had another life. At first, I thought it was just a divorce situation, something complicated but in the past. Then I realized it wasn't the past. You and your mom were still there. Still his. And I became the other woman. He told me he couldn't leave you, that it would ruin you. That he felt trapped. But I believed him when he said he loved me. And then we had Dylan. Dylan. The little boy. My half-brother. The one he held so tightly in the yard. He told me he was trying to do the right thing by both families, she wrote. He swore you didn't know. That you were too young, that your mom didn't suspect. I felt sick about it. But I didn't want to break things apart. I know I'm not blameless, but I never meant to hurt anyone. I was just trying to hold on to the life he promised me. I read her words over and over. I was angry, yes. But I also felt something else. Pity? Empathy? I didn't know. She was living in the same kind of limbo I was. A woman building a life on a foundation of half-truths. I replied with one sentence, "I need to talk to you in person." She agreed. We met 2 days later at a coffee shop 2 towns over, where no one would recognize us. When she walked in, I was struck by how normal she looked. She wasn't some villainous mistress with red lipstick and a cruel smile. She looked tired. She looked nervous. I introduced myself. "I'm Mia," I said. She nodded. "Claire." We talked for hours. She told me everything. How they met at a conference years ago. How it was never meant to go on this long. How every time she tried to end it, he pulled her back in. How he cried when Dylan was born, how he swore this time he'd figure it out, make a clean break, live honestly. But he never did. She admitted she almost called my mom once but didn't want to be the one to destroy our family. I didn't tell her that our family had been broken for years, just none of us knew it yet. As I listened, I felt a strange calmness come over me. This woman wasn't evil. She was just part of the fallout. Like me. Like Dylan. Victims of the same lie. We parted on shaky but civil terms. She asked if I wanted to meet Dylan one day. I said maybe. But right now, I needed to deal with the man at the center of all this. I needed to talk to my dad. I didn't plan some dramatic confrontation. No screaming or door slamming. I just asked my dad to meet me for lunch. Neutral territory. A quiet cafe in a part of town we rarely visited. He showed up in his usual button-down and khakis, like everything was fine. Like he hadn't split himself in half across 2 lives for over a decade. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, sweetheart." I stared at him and said, "We need to talk. And I need you to tell me the truth. All of it." His smile faded instantly. His eyes searched my face for clues. "What are you talking about?" "I know about Claire. I know about Dylan. I know you've been living 2 lives." He froze. For a full 10 seconds, he didn't say anything. Then he looked down at the table and let out the smallest breath. "I was going to tell you." I actually laughed. "When? After I graduated? After Mom died? After Claire left you?" He closed his eyes. "It wasn't supposed to go on this long." "That's what she said too." His eyes snapped up. "You talked to her?" "Yes. She thought I deserved the truth. Something you clearly never thought I needed." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Mia. I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From the fact that your version of love is lying to everyone you say you care about? From the idea that you're not the man I thought you were?" He looked genuinely hurt. And for a second, I felt guilty, until I remembered I wasn't the one who shattered this. He was. "I love you, Mia," he said quietly. "I believe you. That's the worst part. You probably love all of us in your own way. But you don't respect us. You didn't give us the choice to decide how we wanted to live." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I messed up. I messed up everything." There was a long silence between us. Then I asked, "Does Mom know?" He hesitated. "That's a yes," I said. "She's known for a few years. We had an arrangement. She didn't want to divorce. She wanted things to look normal for you." My stomach dropped. My mom had known? And never said anything? She knew about the other house? I asked. He shook his head. "Not everything. She knew there was someone else. She just didn't ask questions she didn't want answers to." I didn't know if that made it better or worse. "I want you to tell her I know," I said. "And I want you to talk to Claire. Really talk to her. Not as someone you're trying to keep happy, but as someone you've hurt." He nodded again. "Okay. And Dad?" "Yeah. I don't forgive you. Not yet. I don't even know if I ever will." "I understand." We finished our lunch mostly in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. But when we stood up and hugged goodbye, it felt different. Hollow. I had answers now. But they came with a weight I hadn't been prepared for. And I still didn't know what to do with all of it. After the talk with my dad, I didn't go straight home. I couldn't. My mind was racing, and I didn't trust myself to sit still. I wandered through a bookstore I used to love as a kid, flipping through pages without really reading. I bought a notebook. Something about writing down my thoughts made it feel like I could contain them somehow. When I finally got home, Mom was in the kitchen making tea. She looked at me the same way she always did, gentle, concerned, full of quiet strength. But now I saw her differently. Not because I loved her less, but because I realized how much she'd kept buried under that calm exterior. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, and without much warning, I said, "I know about Dad." Her hands didn't shake. She didn't drop the mug. She just looked at me, then nodded once. "I thought you might. How long have you known?" She stirred her tea slowly. I suspected for years. Confirmed maybe 3 years ago. I didn't want to burden you. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around it. You just lived with it? She gave a sad smile. I made a choice. A messy one, maybe. But I thought it was better for you to have some form of stability. And truthfully, I wasn't ready to start over. Not at this point in my life. But you knew he had a second family. No. I knew there was someone. I didn't know about Claire or the child. That part. I just learned recently. That shook me. You only just found out? And you still didn't say anything? I was ashamed. And scared. And angry. And I thought, what good would it do to tell you and destroy what little foundation we had left? I didn't know what to say. I felt betrayed all over again, not just by my dad now, but by my mom, too. Even if her silence came from love. I'm not a child anymore, I said. You could have told me. She reached across the table and took my hand. I see that now. I do. And I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you. Maybe I was just protecting myself. We both sat there for a long time, holding hands and drinking tea that had gone cold. Over the next few days, I avoided Claire. I needed space to figure out how I felt. I journaled, I worked late, I ignored my dad's texts. I wasn't angry the way I thought I'd be. I wasn't ready to forgive him, but I was slowly making room for the reality of who he was: flawed, scared, selfish, but still my dad. Then one night, I got a message from Dylan. It was simple. Hi. I know this is weird. But I was wondering if you wanted to meet sometime? I stared at the message for over an hour. My half-brother. A kid I never asked for, never expected, never thought I'd have. What was I supposed to say? I typed out and deleted a dozen replies before settling on, sure. Let's meet somewhere public. We agreed on a weekend afternoon at a park halfway between our homes. I had no idea what to expect. Was he angry? Curious? Was this even his idea? When I got there, he was already sitting on a bench with a skateboard beside him, fidgeting with the sleeves of his hoodie. He stood when he saw me. Hey, he said. Hey. We stood awkwardly before I sat down. He followed. This is weird, he said. I laughed. Yeah. Really weird. He glanced at me. You don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. I wanted to know who you were. My sister. Something in me cracked a little at that word. Sister. I don't blame you for anything, I said quietly. None of this is your fault. I know, he nodded. It just sucks. I didn't even know about you until a few months ago. My mom told me when they broke up. She said you deserved to know, but she wanted it to be your choice. She was right, I said. We talked for an hour. About school. About music. About how awkward this whole thing was. But also, about what it felt like to live in the shadow of secrets. He wasn't some random kid. He was real. And he was hurting too. When I got home, I cried harder than I had in months. This whole thing wasn't just about my dad's betrayal. It was about the ripple effects. About people trying to do the right thing in the worst circumstances. About trying to figure out how to move forward with something that never should have happened, but did. And somehow, I wasn't sure I wanted to walk away from all of them. Not yet. After that confrontation in the kitchen, things didn't go back to normal. Not even close. My mom didn't sleep in the same room as Dad that night. I didn't see them speak for a few days. There was a weird stillness in the house, like the air was waiting for something else to blow up. Eventually, my mom sat me down and told me she had known about something for a while. That Dad had changed over the years, and that she had her suspicions, but she'd never had proof. She thanked me for being brave enough to bring it all to light, but her eyes were heavy with sadness. Not anger, just tired, quiet disappointment. Dad tried to fix things. He tried being overly present, overly helpful, and even overly emotional. I don't think I'd ever seen him cry before. But he did, multiple times. At first, it made me uncomfortable, but then I realized he wasn't just crying for getting caught, he was crying for how much he'd broken what he had. He eventually admitted everything. Not just about the woman from the letters, but about a few other situations that happened during work trips over the years. Turns out, the secret pen pal was just one of many cracks in the glass he'd carefully painted over. When everything came out, my mom didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She just asked for space. She moved in with her sister for a while, and Dad moved into the guest room. We became a household of closed doors and quiet meals. As for me, I felt stuck between them, torn between loyalty and love, anger and empathy. I spent nights wondering whether I'd done the right thing by opening the box. Whether it was even my business in the first place. But then I remembered how it felt reading those words, those letters, that notebook filled with dreams that didn't include us. I remembered how it felt to realize your own father had lived a parallel life for years. And I knew I wasn't the one who broke anything, I just turned on the light. Eventually, my parents decided to separate. It wasn't loud or messy. Just a calm agreement that they wanted different things now. My dad moved out officially, and my mom started therapy. I started therapy too. We talked a lot. About trust. About pain. About how even the strongest families can bend under secrets. And about how sometimes, love isn't enough if it's not paired with honesty. My relationship with my dad is complicated. We talk. We check in. But there's a space between us that didn't exist before. A space filled with questions I'm not sure I'll ever ask, and truths I'm not sure I'll ever get. But I've accepted that. Sometimes, healing means accepting that the people we love can hurt us. And that forgiveness is a process, not a pass. And now, when I look back on that attic, that old notebook, those letters, I still feel the sting. But I also feel stronger. Because telling the truth, even when it hurts, is the first step toward healing. And sometimes, the bravest thing a girl can do is open the box.